Hey there, everybody. Matt Busby here. We've got Andy Pilgrim. He's here at the track at NCA Motorsports Park doing some fun stuff for automobile. And we thought we'd just sit down and kind of chat about stuff since we've got a little time on our hands.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah. So, Andy, you've had a long and storied career, very successful at pretty much everything you've done, right? So, what are the highs? What are the highest highs you had in your racing career?
Well, there's a few. It's a long career, mate.
Yeah.
But championships, race wins, memorable race wins and championships, of which there luckily have been a lot. The majors, the Petit Le Mans win, which was the first major win for Corvette Racing, was a big one. The so-called Pilgrim Pass that was part of that. Obviously winning Daytona for the first time, then second time, and then the third time was overall in 2004, which was major. The other two wins were class wins. Sebring, the 12-hour, the big ones. Being at Le Mans, being on the podium at Le Mans, never won Le Mans, but been lucky enough to be on the podium 5 times with the GT class cars. And of course the memorable co-drivers and being on factory teams. Being on the PPG, the BMW factory team, if you like, with likes of Bill Oberlin and Boris Said at the time, people like that. And the Corvette Racing, of course, the Cadillac factory team. And then even up to 2018 with the Camaro guys, with, again, GM Racing, with the Camaro program, and also the Volvo program. So factory teams, championships, many co-drivers. There's so many highs over such a long time.
Yeah. Favorite race car?
No favorite race car. Many memorable ones. The Porsche GT1 was probably the most amazing. The one that I drove with Alan McNish and Jochen Rohr. That was an called Thierry Boutsen, Bob Wallach, over 3 years from 97 to 99. That car on the final iteration in 99, because we were running against real prototypes that had a tremendous amount of downforce, they let us bump the power, and Brad Kettler was telling me, it's about 820 horsepower now, and no traction control. And when you had the colder tires on, the thing would, like Mosport, for instance, you're going up the back straight at Mosport, the thing would spin the tires at 150 miles an hour when you made the shift into fifth gear, and it was entertaining to say the least.
Right on. Any of the more modern cars that kind of struck out to you, or do you find that like you've been doing a lot of the stuff in the Ferrari GT3 car, you've been in the ATS GT3 car.
Yes.
Do you find that as the cars have more and more aero, they get less and less exciting to drive?
You don't want to move them around too much, but you find in certain tracks, on certain corners, you do have to move the car on the way into the corner, for instance. And even though it is a GT3 car, you don't want the car sliding too much because you will raise tire pressures, but you still have to be confident that when the car moves, it'll come back. And with the tire technology and the suspension technology, whether it was the Cadillac or the Ferrari that I'm currently driving, it makes it's a huge testament to the engineers that they have got these cars to the point. Now, you've got to have quick hands, but when the car does make a move, you can actually catch it. And you can, when the tires get really old or overheated, you can slide them around a little bit, and that you still have what you think is, it's a sports car. All in all, it's not a prototype. And even in prototypes, they slide around too, but that's a whole nother thing. But it's great to be in GT cars. I love to be in GT cars, and that's where I've spent most of my career, of course. But when the tires are new and the cars, the tires are sticky and they've got all the downforce in these cars, it's an incredible feeling. But it's still nice to know that you can slide them around a little bit if you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to drive the car.
So, like of the, you started in Renault Cup, right?
Yeah.
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 Motorcycles first, and then Renault Cup.
1873.
to now, to where we're at now in the climate, where there's a lot more factory involvement in the race cars. There's a lot less, a lot less of the people, the Rileys of the world, just showing up to the racetrack with their best effort. What was the heyday? Like, what's the pinnacle of sports car? Like, when was the paddock the best? Like the coolest cars, the best people, all that kind of fun stuff.
I think it's not so much a best. It was when there was more traffic, when there were more cars, more teams. Was probably, I'd have to say, the early 1990s, to the middle of 2005, 6, 7 time, that seemed to be when the grids were the fullest in all the series. Like when you had 86 cars at the Daytona 24, when you had 80 plus cars at the Sebring 12 hour, the traffic made a huge difference.
Yeah.
It was a survival in Daytona. This year, of course, the racing's great and it's close in the classes, but with only 30-something cars in the race, no wonder you were going for hours and hours and hours of green track racing, because the guys know what they're doing, the cars are super reliable, and you just don't have the traffic. When you have the traffic, you have the incidences, the lower percentage passes, and so it was more then. And I think the race craft, being able to race side by side with guys, the more cars are on track, the more you do longer races with that many cars on track, you really have to drive, and your racecraft becomes much better. I think just because you're passing more people and you're racing with more people. So when you're in a race with 3 guys and you still have the prototypes coming by and you're still passing the slower cars, because a lot of times I was in the middle class, it was more fun as a driver, and it honed your skills better in the racecraft side, I think. But all of the racing, even today, and when I first started, it was just fun.
Yeah.
Because I started so late in getting into racing. I was 27 years old before I got into any race car. I wasn't one of those kids lucky enough to be in cars when I was younger. And I think the enthusiasm level for me is the same today. If I'm getting into a Volkswagen for automobile on track at NCM, I'm still as enthusiastic as I was when I first got into my Renault Cup car and on a racetrack. So
speaking of favorites, Jeff wants to know, Andy, what vintage cars from mid-70s to 1990 are your favorite?
Vintage race cars?
Yes.
Funnily enough, the race team that I'm with the Ferrari right now, is they have a C4 race car that's a mid-1980s Camel GT car that was just finished by Ray Evernham and his group, and they put this car together, and I got to test the car for the first time at Daytona last November. And at the moment, that car, as a vintage car, is definitely just a highlight. The noise is absolutely deafening. I'll have to figure out that next time I drive it. But it gets you back to sliding the cars around. The car has 700 plus horsepower. Ray put some kind of insane engine in it. And it's got no TC, it's got no ABS, you're on it, and the tires are good, but you have to slide the car everywhere. So you're sliding all the way through the infield at Daytona, you're sliding through the kink at the Daytona, and it's the same with any of these cars, anything you get into. If they're well put together and well prepared, they're a heck of a lot of fun. But that particular C4 Corvette, at the moment, I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into that one. But any of the vintage cars I've been in, even like a 1959 Jag that I drove at the Bahamas Grand Prix, I remember back a few years ago when they had that race. It was a vintage race. It was just fun. It's just fun. It's the adaptation, because my career's gone from so many showroom stock through to prototypes over so many years and so many different cars. It's been it's just you adapt quickly to these cars, and you trying to find the sweet spot in each car as quickly as possible, and that's it. Don't ask it to do more than it can do, but it's all those cars are good, but those 2 cars stand out for sure.
And then another question from Tony: personal car, manual or automatic?
I have 2. Luckily, I have an old Mazda Miata, 2006 Miata, and I have a current BMW that has a double clutch automatic. So I have both, but I still love manual transmissions, yeah.
And then Bernie wants to know, how about those Firebirds?
Oh, well, Jeff Beitzel passed away a few years ago. He was the team owner at Prototype Automotive, and Jeff was one of the guys that got me into racing, gave me a chance to drive those Firebirds, and my first championship came in a Pontiac Firebird in 1995, driving with Joe Vardy. So loads of fond memories in those Firebirds. They were so much fun. Soft, you almost need a Dramamine to drive them, because the tires were shaved street tires. So in order to not impact the tire too quickly with the suspension, we had them rolling all over the place. So they would roll around, but they stuck, and they were quick too. They were really quick.
All right, and then Michael wants to know, what's your favorite car that you've driven at NCM thus far, and what would you want to drive there that you haven't yet?
Well, I think it has to be the GT3 RS that I did for the Pro Racers Take lap for automobile, because Mr. Busby here is an expert on lap times, and Matt is usually within a few tenths when a new car comes to the track and we're going to run it for the Pro Racers Take thing. He'll give me a lap time, and it's usually pretty much spot on. But that one even surprised Matt, right, Matt?
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. So I'd say that one, and then what I haven't driven yet, which we're trying to get hold of, is of course the new C8. I need one. We're trying to get one. The magazine, my editor's trying to get one. I'm trying to get one. So I can't wait to have that here.
All right, and then we'll turn it back to you, Matt.
So you talked a little bit about like moving through the eras of sports car racing specifically, and I'm just enamored with all that, the IMSA paddock, World Challenge, and all that, and there's so much history and so much personalities and all that kind of stuff. So you've driven alongside a lot of personalities.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, like everybody has their style. Like everybody has a certain way that they like a car to act, and then there's certain people that act a certain way outside the car. Who have been your favorite? Who has been the teammates that were memorable for you?
Oh, Matthew. That's almost like saying, how long is a piece of string, mate?
Yeah.
Gosh, so many names. All right. Well, I mentioned, Thierry Boots and Bob Wallach. I got to drive with them just one time in the Champion Porsche at Sebring 12-hour. Total professionals, very nice people, but intensity through the roof. Very intense, very competitive as teammates. And, the memorable in the sense that the race resumes, you're in awe. F1, Bob Wallach's incredible resume in GT racing. Of course, driving with Dale Jr. and Dale Sr. in the 24-hour, that's, everything's been talked about with that one. But Dale Sr. And I became good friends there. And then you've got Johnny O'Connell. Johnny and I were teammates at Cadillac for 5 years, and Johnny's actually coming here with his group in June. I think that's hopefully still on. And Johnny was a great teammate, amazing personality. Ron Fellows, of course, and so many others. I mean, Randy Pobst and I go back forever. Randy and I drove as teammates way back in the 80s. One of my first race wins was with Randy in the 86 or 87, can't remember exactly what year now, in a Honda Civic Si, I think. But all in all, I mean, again, there's just Alan McNish, of course, Alan McNish. There's so many that nobody stands out as being, wow, this was my best teammate, because I've had so many. I think it's over 80 different co-drivers over the years. But those guys stand out as being memorable, and nobody. Oh, Max Angelelli. He was great. I mean, people had a problem with Max. Could they call it Max the Axe and all that stuff? But, he was absolutely intense on his stuff. He was tough on the racetrack. Yeah, had a few incidents on racetrack or whatever. But I'll tell you what, as intense as he was great as a teammate. He was always the same guy every day. And I can take that all day long. You know what I mean? So I enjoyed running around Max at Cadillac for the little bit we were teammates together. Memorable. He was memorable one for sure. Max Pappas was another one, so.
Have you had any nightmare weekends? Like weekends that you still remember that were just nothing went right? We've all had that weekend if you're in this long enough.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, definitely. The one of the ones I remember was Mosport. It was in 2005 in the Cadillac, and we had a wheel hub broke on the Cadillac at the top of turn 2, and the car immediately spun around. The data, it was a 10G spin. It spun so fast, and it went flying off the road backwards, as it wasn't paved then, it was just grass, and it took off. One of the guys from another team was up on the bank, and I forgot who it is now, but essentially he came up to me afterwards and said, your car was about 15 feet in the air, and it was upside down, and then it flipped back up again, and it landed flat. and it landed completely flat on the grass. And there's pictures of it. Canadian motorsports guy got a picture of it when it landed the second time, and it hurt a lot. I really hurt. I don't think I would have been allowed to drive for the rest of that weekend. My neck and everything else hurt a lot. And the guys, I felt terrible. Not my fault, but you still feel bad. You know, the guys had to work. The guys from the other crew, the other cars came in, fabricated, did. All four corners of the car were broken because of the hit from so high up and everything else. And everybody got it put back together, and then basically I felt really bad, of course, being a moron, you know, that I am at that point. I don't really say how bad I felt, and drove the rest of the weekend, and I think we finished 4th or 5th, but I made it through the weekend. But when I got home, I think I slept for 24 hours, and I felt like garbage for the next several weeks.
Yeah.
And you know, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Now I don't think with all the protocols, which are correct, I would have been allowed to get back in the car.
Right.
Yeah, and that would have cost me a championship because I won the championship that year.
Really quick, back to some questions from Facebook. Tony wants to know, money, no object. We'll do both of you all. What car would you buy or custom from the ground up? Matt, you first.
Wow. So it'd be one of two things. The easy button is to just write the Singer folks a check for one of their 911s. The other thing would be a 60s Alpha GTV, but resto modded to be a little bit more potent.
That's a pretty good choice. That's a nice car. Yeah. What would I buy? Money, no object. That's an interesting question. I've never even thought about that. I'd probably...
You've had a lot of cars.
Yeah, it's true.
It's hard to get picky about cars when you go through a lot of cars.
You know what? I've never owned a Ferrari. I'd have to say that I would probably like to buy a Ferrari one day, and one day, but just in a, no need, no object, I'd probably get a Ferrari Pista. I think that's a beautiful car. Or the F8 that I just got to drive for automobile. I mean, it's just a beautiful car. So something like that, to have something like that.
And then Jeff wants to know, Andy, any Hans Stuck stories?
Any Hans Stuck?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, one in particular. Well, first of all, love Hans Stuck. Great guy. We were both hung out at each. I've got a couple actually. I went to the Audi TT RS launch at Lime Rock about 2 years ago, and Hans was there as a representative for Audi, and he knew I was there, so we were chatting, and the other guys, they were journalists. They know how to drive, everything else. But it was a lead-follow thing. And so at lunchtime, Hans comes up to me and says, "Oh, you want to go for a ride? We go. I was like, okay, I'll go. And then he's like, blah, blah, blah. So do this, and I turn everything off for you. He says, hard to turn everything off, but we turn everything off. And he says, they need pictures, so stay close to me. Well, okay, so he flies out of the pits of Lime Rock, and I am pedaling as hard as I can to stay with him to get the pictures. I mean, after 3 laps of chasing him around Lime Rock, he just gets out of the car laughing like a drain, and I'm like sweating, like, well, that was fun. He's like, you like it was fun, right? We had good fun, good time. And it's like, he's older than me, and I'm old enough, and he's just like a kid, still like a kid. The one other story was back at Bridgestone Supercar Series. I was in the Lotus, he was in the Porsche factory car, and we were racing together, final podium spot. And whatever happened to his car, it stumbled coming out of the last turn. I'd been trying to get him, but he was, I couldn't get past him. And this car stumbled coming out of the corner, and I just passed him over the line. And at that point, Hans Stuck was like, wow, this guy's legend, and I'm just, some guy trying to figure out how to go racing. And that was a mega moment for me. And he came up afterwards, and just like he was at Lime Rock 2 years ago, that was great. Oh, that was super. That was so good, so good. And he shook my hand. He didn't know me from Adam, but I certainly knew him. So that was memorable. Yeah.
All right, back to you, Matt.
So with that, it's something that I think I've talked to a few folks about. We remember, Sir Sterling Moss passed this week, which is a sad thing. We remember these folks James Hunt, Niki Lauda, the names brands that have kind of survived the test of time, would they be fast today?
I can answer that partially. Never raced with James Hunt or Niki Lauda, but I can tell you something about Sterling Moss. Phil, believe it or not, there was a 24-hour race in St. Louis quite a few years ago. It was part of the Escort Radar Detector Series, and I ran that race in a Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, and in a similar class was Sterling Moss in a Porsche 944. And we were out at the same time in one stint, and I knew it was him, and I raced with him like for an hour plus in the car. We were running together out there, and it was nighttime, and I'm thinking, this guy has still got it.
Yeah.
He was on it, man. He was on it, and I don't know how old he was then, but he was plenty old enough, and it was like, it was memorable. It was memorable, yeah. Yeah, so he still had the stuff. Whether he'd be fast like IndyCar Formula One today, I don't know. But he still had his stuff in what was essentially modified showroom stock car.
Yeah.
So he was still running,
The attributes in which we look for in a driver now are a little different, right? So
yes, true.
The engineering end of it, Neil Yanni is a perfect example where he's a Porsche engineer and worked his way into a P1 seat where he understood every system on that car, and that's not, I just don't see Dorsey Schrader doing that kind of thing. He's not gonna sit down with his engineer and go over the efficiency of the curve system or something like that. And it's a little bit different, but
I'm not sure that's necessary, though. I'm not sure that's necessary, to be honest, because I don't think there are several F1 guys, which I will not name names, who I've raced with, who couldn't spell suspension. And the fact of the matter was, they was just quick in the car, and all they needed to do was give download information of what the car was doing. And once the engineer understood what the driver needs, I think that's what you need. I don't think you need to know that stuff. I've made a career somewhat of being a development driver for different cars and different race teams, even OEM cars. I've done development work with suspension stuff. But honestly, Matt, I don't think you need it. I think that guy in particular that you're talking about happens to be an engineer. I get that, but I don't think so. The Dorseys, and Dorsey's a friend of mine and an ex-teammate, but I don't think you need to be that. It was just having an engineer, especially today, that's important. You have to have the right engineer to understand what the driver needs, because most drivers don't have a clue about suspension and how the cars work.
Right.
They can't tell you the difference between aerodynamic issues and mechanical grip issues. And that's a big deal, even in the basic sense. But it doesn't matter, because if they're fast and they've got a good engineer, it probably doesn't matter.
So is it the other way around now? So like a Dorsey Schrader, keeping with that, like a guy that's just lightning fast and everything he does, most competitive in the world, is that enough? Like if you've got a good engineer that speaks the language, that can establish a nomenclature and say, hey, okay, car drive good, car drive bad, you can get there,
Money.
Well,
Matt, it's money. It's money, Matt. Come on. It's money. I don't know if I came to America with $100 and a job as a computer programmer. I saved some money and went running Renault Cup. I drove the car to the racetrack, 1,400 miles for the first race, and I eventually got an option to sort of run with a race team 2 years later after using my own savings to start with, and then I get an option to start earning some money from racing, and then I get an offer of a factory ride when I'm almost 40 years old, because I got in so late. I don't know that that's going to happen today, man. No factory's looking at a 40-year-old. So for my career, all I'm going to say is that, just because you're in your late 20s and you're earning money, don't think you can't have a racing career. But I think it's a low percentage these days. You've got to have the money early, start early, get into the go-karts, do the basic ladder system. I'm not saying that's bad. I just think it's a reality now.
Yeah.
Half the grid on any series all the way up to Formula One, half the grid is there because they've got the money to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it goes.
So you've done coaching here. right?
Yes.
Have you worked with a whole bunch of like younger, new folks in the
Here?
last? Oh, not just here,
Oh.
but like in your career. Have you worked with a lot of younger drivers, like up and comers or anything like that?
Yeah, because I had a computer company, and when I wasn't racing, I was doing that. I never worked at a racetrack per se, so the coaching wasn't something that I did much. So all I can tell you is when I was asked to maybe by a team say, can you help this particular driver, whether it was on another team but the factory said, help them anyway, or it was just a friend whose son was coming in, or somebody said, can you help my son? I'm happy to do that. I've helped a lot of people, but first of all, you have to get inside the head. As you well know, racing is as much mental as it is having the talent to get the car around the track, because some of the fastest guys in racecraft, that breaks down under pressure. The big thing was, can you pass people? Can you be passed? Can you hold the lead? And all that is mental as much as going around the racetrack. Can you distract someone? Can you worry someone enough that they lose track of where they are and make a mistake? You don't want to send them in the wall, but can you worry them enough to do it? So for me, when I coach people, I first try to get into the mental side, whether it's someone who's coming to a track for the first time in their whole lives in their street car, or whether it's a pro driver who's trying to find a 10th or two, you still have to start with the basics. And so it really doesn't matter if someone's 55 or 15, it's whether they have the drive and the will to want to learn. And the biggest thing you need is an open mind. So when you come to do something new, or if I go to do something new, I open my mind to the fact that I have a preconceived idea, but I need to get rid of that. And so the biggest, the largest steps forward in the shortest time with drivers that I've worked with are the ones that can clear their mind of pre-existing conditions or pre-existing ideas and learn something new. Because golf is a good way to look at that. Golfers have this swing, and when you finally go to a coach, even though you might be a good golfer, they probably have to undo everything and get you back to the basics, and it's very hard to do that. But if you do it, finally, like Tiger Woods has reinvented himself so many times, it's the same with racing. You have to clear your mind, and then you can make the biggest jumps forward. And that's what I found with people that even here, and this is the most coaching I've ever done, is your one-on-ones that you've been setting me up with.
And speaking of coaching, really quick, Russ wants to know, Matt, which corner at NCM is the tough one that you want to slay?
I never feel like I get 17 right, ever. No matter how fast or how much racetrack you use, on the edge you are, I never feel like I get 17 right.
Andy, do you have any corners?
Well, 17 is a really interesting corner. It's one of the ones when I talk about with people to say it deserves massive respect, because you can carry speed in there, and just as Matt says, if you carry too much speed in there, you mess up the exit. And if you carry the right speed in and you get the car rotated just perfectly, you feel that you should have gone in quicker because you didn't use all the exit. It's a very interesting corner, but the other one for me is turn 5. Turn 5 is a very quick corner, and I just always feel that that one has a bit more in it. But ultimately, when I find that I went in there exactly right, generally speaking, I'm fighting the car halfway through because it says, hey, you're going too fast. But it's a very different. There's so many corners at this place that are hard to get perfect, which makes it such a brilliant racetrack.
All right, back to you, Matt, and we'll wrap it up in just a few minutes.
Yeah, right on. So what are the traits of all the teammates you've had, people you've coached, talked about an open mind, what are the traits that for the folks that are like trying to get better, trying to improve, that maybe they're just getting into it, what are the traits that you can pick out that are the common across the success stories?
Mental focus. It doesn't matter what's going on outside the track. Some guys, have a lot of stuff going on, whether it's family stuff, whether it's business-related things, whether it's management or marketing stuff, events that we have to go to, the ones that get frustrated or have things going on outside and they can't shut it down. So the biggest thing you have to do, no matter what's going on in your life, you have to be able to shut it off before you get in the car. That's obvious, and some drivers have a much harder time doing that. And then physical fitness. The physical fitness to be able to run. I mean, I did the 24-hour race I did last November was 4 one-hour races through 24 hours. And I'm older now, but I try to keep myself in a fit condition that I can run 24 hours. If Tim Pappas calls me at Black Swan and says we're doing the spot 24, I don't want to be going, oh, am I fit enough to do it? And I think the fitness aspect is huge as well. Fitness, mental aspects, because when you get to a professional level, man, the talent's there. There's 20 guys that can get around a racetrack within a couple of tenths. And it's that, ultimately, it's going to be that mental strength and the repeatability. It's no good, like, if you can qualify a car that works for you 5 times out of 10, but the other 5 times you can't bring it up to that level because your mind says, oh, the car's not how I want it. And therefore, you've lost 2 tenths because the car isn't how I want it. The guys that get in the car and get the most out of it, like the Kevin Estras, Nicky Katzberg, 2 of the best GT drivers I've ever driven around, current now. These are current guys. Those 2 guys, Nicky, I was teammate with him in 2016 and drove against Kevin. And those guys will get in anything and just put it on the absolute edge. And that's it. You've got to be able to get in the car and make the best of it. Figure out what's not working for you, that's fine, but then get around it. And that was always the case. In the old 24-hour racing days, somebody would crack a wheel somewhere, suspension bent, steering wheel off. When you get in the car, you don't complain and whine on the radio, you make it work. You know what lap times you need, get it there. If you possibly can, and don't crash the car. Mental stuff, man, mental stuff, big time.
Right on. Anything that you've, any kind of like exercises or anything like that you've done that helps, or is it just a repeatability? Is it like that seat time thing, right? So you want to get better at driving a race car, get in the seat and just do it,
Yeah, seat time is everything. Simulators I've used on occasion, like when I first raced at the Nürburgring, which was 2017. I didn't have one. I bought a little video game thing and I learned the corners. I think that helps if you go into a new racetrack, no doubt about it. But I don't believe the simulators, even the ones like at the Ford Performance Center that are millions of dollars, they don't feel like a race car. So anything you can get into at whatever level, like a little Miata is absolutely perfect, autocross, perfect. Just get out and do something in a car, prepare yourself for it, even if it's a little autocross thing. Just prepare yourself the best you can, prepare your car the best you can, and do the best you can. And once whatever you do on a track, autocross or racetrack, do it the best of you possibly can, and make notes. Make notes. How did I feel? Was I up for it? Question yourself. How do I feel? You may have, maybe you didn't feel that good that day. Be aware of that. So you may want to just not be, just be aware that you may not feel 100%, and just be aware of that. And also, did I do as well as the day before? Get your lap times if you can. Get something to take your lap times. Just make it official. I still have notes from when I started racing, notebooks from back in the mid-'80s. I still have those notebooks because I made notes on everything, not because anyone told me to, but because I had no coaching. I just decided, I'm a computer programmer, a bit nerdy, right? So I made notes because I knew I couldn't remember everything. So I made notes. So make notes, make sure you're in good shape mentally, physically as you can, and then just go at it, man. That's it.
Right on. Well, we're going to end on that. Thanks, everybody. If you want to ask any more questions for Andy or for me, shoot them over to our Facebook page or to matt@motorsportspark.org, and we'll get them answered for you.